right, continuing then with student suspension. Important Supreme Court case is the case Goss versus Lopez. Attorneys refer to it as Goss. They determined that students have sufficient property interest, as they stated, entitling them to public education and sufficient liberty interests, so that if a student does something to be suspended, they still are entitled to due process. In short-term things, in school suspensions, short-term 1 to 3 day suspensions can be a relatively informal hearing, but in all cases the parents should be contacted. Also, in a case of an immediate suspension, is allowed when there's a danger to persons or property if the disruption is imminent on campus. So we're jumping to page 30 in your green book. Long-term suspensions, more than 10 days in length, require a formal due process hearing. Actually, a lot of states have shortened that to 5 days, so over a 5-day suspension.
Nevada is 10 still?
Nevada is still 10 as far as I know, but some have reduced it to 5. Nevada student discipline statutes. All right, these are summarized at the bottom of 23 and the top of 24 in the purple book, and starting about a third of the way down on page 30 of the green book. Bodily injuries to school employees, drug trafficking. What you have to know here is basically what the penalties are. So for bodily injury to school employees and drug trafficking, for the first occurrence, the student will be suspended or expelled from school for a period at least 1 semester, but the student will be given some kind of alternative school. That's one of the reasons that school districts all have alternative programs. If it's a second occurrence, then instead of being suspended for a semester, the student is permanently expelled, but they receive equivalent instruction. It didn't used to be that way. It used to be that if a kid was expelled, the school board did, and the kid was out of the school district. Could not attend, and like in Nevada, and most states, they could go to school anywhere in the state. But that's been changed because the courts have ruled that the kids still have a right to education no matter what they did. And so therefore the school district still has some responsibility. Firearms and dangerous weapons is the other Nevada student discipline statute. The first occurrence is basically 1 year. And they may put in 1 semester, a sneaky question in here, 1 semester, but remember it's 1 semester for the injury or drug trafficking, but it's 1 semester, 1 year for firearms and dangerous weapons. Second offense, permanently expelled from school and receive equivalent instruction. So we're jumping to the top of 24 in the purple, and just about to jump down to page 31 in your green book. The one thing here that they might ask you, in these cases, the superintendent can grant exceptions to those particular laws. So in either of those cases, the superintendent has the power to override that if there are extenuating circumstances. Now, habitual disciplinary problems, and we're jumping over to 31 in the green book. It just lists what they are. I haven't heard any specific thing as to anything that was asked on the test about it. Notice of the presence of violent students, we talked about that already. And that's back in the teacher rights on page 12 in the purple book. All right, habitual truancy, you'll love this one. Habitual truancy, 3 or more unexcused absences is habitual truancy. Unfortunately, I think you find an awful lot of kids running around here that have habitual truancy. Truancy has always been very difficult to control. It's extremely difficult. They may ask you the number of days, and you would answer 3.
What does that mean?
Habitual truancy?
No, like, what's an excused absence?
An excused absence is excuses that doesn't count as truancy.
So what your parents say? Oh, I took them out of school.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah, for some excused reason, but if the school won't accept it.
mm.
Usually the schools will. I'm glad you asked that, because that's a good question. Because there are, once a kid turns 18, the kid can write their own notes. And so an 18-year-old kid could write, "Please excuse me for, George, for because I had a bad cold," or something like that, and the school basically has to accept it because they're of age. Good question.
But they're considered habitual if it's unexcused for 3 days?
For 3 days, yeah. I tried that once, and gave up after that. I had a kid whose father kept him at home all the time, and I met with the father. Father said, "Well, I need him at home, he's gonna stay at home." And so I said, "All right." So we went to court, and the judge found in favor of the school, and they fined the guy $100. And he moved over the state line into Kings Beach the next week. And so it wasn't worth the effort, hardly.
You made a point, though.
Yeah, I made my point, that's true. And sometimes that's
Worth it.
it's definitely worth it. Yeah, I could tell you stories, but I won't because I'm time here. Exception to the disciplinary statutes. Remember that we said that the superintendent can allow exceptions to those other 2 and long-term suspensions. Well, permission for having a weapon on campus, the principal can grant approval for doing that. Now, everybody always looks at me, "What do you mean?" Well, just think for a minute. Your grandfather has an old musket from the Civil War or a sword or something like that, and they want to bring, all the kid does is, or parent contacts the school, the principal says, "That's fine, leave it in the office until you're going to take it to class," and things like that. They've got a tricky question here that says that the superintendent will be the one who approves the possession of weapons.
10 seconds.
Okay. We're at the bottom of the page looking at board review safety net for K-6 students.
All right.